Can you understand others? And when I say others, I mean other social groups, not just other people, other social groups. I personally am a firm believer that nobody can completely understand other people, but today specifically we are talking about understanding other social groups, especially, obviously, other social groups that we personally don't belong to. Let us talk about it. But before we begin, I have to tell you that this is Yury Experience, and here I share my various experiences about different topics. I do 2 videos per week, Mondays and Thursdays. If you will enjoy this video, please drop a like. You can also subscribe to the channel. Let's go. So what do I mean by this understanding? You understand yourself, more or less. You understand why do you do some stuff in some specific way. You understand your reasons, and more or less you do understand your character. Maybe not completely, you still have some subconscious part of it, but to a degree, you understand yourself. Similarly, with close people, with close friends, maybe close family, you do kind of understand them. You know what to expect from them, what kind of actions, what kind of decisions, what kind of suggestions. That is normally based on various experience that you had with these people or that you had with yourself, with different kind of analysis and whatnot. But what about other people? What about people that are outside of your circle, outside of your bubble, outside of this group of people with whom you normally have conversation? My big opinion here is, I think that people are not completely able to understand the way of thinking of other social groups, especially if they don't belong to this specific social group. And obviously I'm now talking about majorities. I'm not talking about each individual. I'm talking about the movement, about the majority of this social group, about the way and the way of thinking, about the reasons that bring people from this social group, or at least majority of people from this social group, to movement, to doing, to action. So what can we do? We can make assumptions. We have an assumption that this social group behaves in some specific manner. Then people, or at least majority of people in this group, behave in a specific way and have specific reasons for behaving in that kind of way. And even if we do our best and go outside of our bubble or do some good quality research, we will not be able to go outside completely of our bubble, and we still will be a little bit but stuck in our own way of thinking. We will look at experience and at reasons of these people, of this group of people, and think about that through our own experience, through the glasses of our own experience, and thanks to that we will not able to completely understand them. Yes, our assumption will be better thanks to communication, thanks to research, thanks to doing your best to understand. But I don't think we will come, or each of us can come to this complete understanding of reason, especially not as far as we understand ourselves or people close to us or people from our social group. Especially including the fact that people can lie, and sources can lie, and information can lie, and that will lead to misrepresentation in your eyes, in your head. And also not everything, not every reason and action is completely clear. As I already mentioned, for our own selves, for our own character, for our own reasons, some of them, or at least maybe even majority of our actions, we do understand, and we understand the reason behind it. But there will always be some subconscious stuff that is happening on somewhere in our brain which we do not understand, and people from other social groups are no different. I will provide you 2 examples. 2 examples of situations that happened in our history that are horrible, but they did happen and people were okay with that at that time. And we start with Nazis, this word, I'm not sure how to pronounce it in English. And you probably know what it is. During some time, during Germans' history, there was a popular person who decided to kill other people in big amount. That person led people to different conflicts, war, the Second World War, and afterwards a lot of people died, and thankfully that person was defeated, and now we don't have to live under the power of that regime that happened during that time. But obviously one person cannot do everything. One person cannot kill millions and millions of people. I mean, theoretically it can, but let's talk about this specific situation. It wasn't just something that the leader did. the followers did it too. And most of us will think it is horrible. It's such a horrible thing that happened in our history. We do not want it to repeat. But on the other hand, more and more people and scientists agree that if our modern people, like some specific person of our modern society, would be there during that time, that person would be either dead, I probably would be dead because I have Jewish roots, or that person would follow the regime. And there is an assumption that a hell lot of people would follow the regime, a hell lot of people would live in that society and do their thing. Maybe don't even participate in war, they will just do their thing, just live in that time's Germany. And you and me both, if we would live there, probably will follow this whole idea that was there at that moment. That some specific group is very cool and another group is like really bad and shall be killed. You and I would probably be in the same state of mind. It is terrible, I completely agree with you. But I cannot even imagine what the regular person thought about during that time. Like there were people who were opposite, or who were opposing the power but didn't really have a choice. There were people who were supporting, there were people who didn't really care. And all of them had some way of thinking which I think I will never be able to comprehend. And I hope I will never be able to comprehend it. I hope I will never have a reason to try to comprehend it. Although we currently have a situation in the world that is kind of similar to that one. But yeah, I digress. Another dark part of our history is slavery. And I'm not a slave owner, I've never been. I'm not sure about my heritage, but based on my knowledge, most of Ukrainians and Jews didn't participate actively in slavery, at least of other races. But of their race and of their nationality, yes, they did. But that is not what I want to talk about. I did already a video about slavery and you can find information about that there. What I want to talk about is slavery mentality, because there were thousands, hundreds, thousands of people who were slaves and who consciously just remained slaves. At some point, there were more slaves in some countries or in some regions than actual slave owners or people who didn't own slaves, so like just regular free people. In theory, slaves could overthrow some countries if they would decide to, but they didn't. Why? One of the assumptions is because of this slave mentality, slave psychology that people had. And it is not something that people wanted to have. It is something that was pushed in their heads. Slave owners did kind of smart job, if you want to call it like that, and they make people grow up in fear. They made people grow up with understanding that they don't deserve anything. The slaves thought that there were no difference to animals, and some of them lived in the situations or like in surroundings not much different to those of an animal, which is not a good thing, I agree with you completely, but that it wasn't something that led to slaves to oppose their masters, or however it is called. And I think here both you and me cannot even comprehend, can completely understand how is it to be a slave? What kind of mentality does a slave person have? And please don't come at me with something like, I work at a job from 9 to 5 and I don't have enough money to live and whatnot. It's not comparable to slavery. Like, you have your own apartment, you decide what job you can have. There are hell lot of decisions that you are free to have. Slaves, depending on the time that we are talking about, didn't have any. They didn't have any freedoms, like none. Their life was completely not their own, basically. And again, there is pretty much high probability of the fact that if you or me would be a slave during that time, we wouldn't like call for revolution, let us take some action, let us fight these people who are trying to like degrade us. We wouldn't do it, probably. Probably we would be just part of the crowd. It's a crowd that was degraded, the crowd that actually not even wanted anything better. They think they didn't deserve anything better. Obviously, these examples are as extreme as it gets, but On the other hand, there are other examples that are around the world. Theoretically, all these talks about privilege are connected to this not being able to understand. And I would even agree to some degree with that. You know, I don't like the privilege and how it is discussed in society. But similarly, as I will never be able to understand how some social groups think, and all doesn't matter what I will do, as long as I don't participate in the social group, I will not be able to do it, and in some social groups I will never be able to participate. Even though that is true, which is also true, other people from other social groups cannot completely comprehend my life from the point of view of my social groups or social groups I belong to. Which is why everything we can do is try to educate ourselves as good as it gets. Try to communicate with other people with outside of your bubble as good, as far, as cool as it gets. And at the very best, we will become really close to more or less understanding how is it to think as another being, as a person of the other social group. But again, I don't think that in all its completion, I don't think it is possible to completely understand the way of thinking of other social groups. That's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If it is the case, please drop a like and also subscribe to the channel. You can also leave a comment, and except for that, I see you on Thursday. Have a great week.